When Genshin was released, it was all about attack. Pyro characters reigned supreme thanks to Bennett's attack buff and vape damage. But now, things have changed. Not only do reactions do a boatload of damage, but more and more characters are being released that don't rely on attack. Period. That in itself is a good thing, as you have more freedom to build teams. But maybe it's bad when you have something like this. That's a little too broken, don't you think? Hu Tao was one of the first characters to be released with split scaling, HP and attack, and to this day, she stands at the top of the meta, even when 90% of her teams don't rely on the best buffer in the game, Bennett. She instead relies on Hydro Resonance, which is a 25% HP boost, and Yelan in her best teams. But even without that, she still has insane power, without needing an attack buffer purely thanks to her scaling. We strayed away from HP scaling for a while after Hu Tao was released, as most HP scalers are defense oriented, but we returned to it with Yelan, one of the most powerful characters in the game. What do Yelan and Hu Tao have in common? They don't need buffers to produce insane damage. We aren't speaking on constellations here, but C6 Yelan can easily solo the entire game. It's honestly insane. So we began to see a problem here. HP scaling DPS characters. I get why they designed it this way. They get no buffs from other characters like Bennett or from artifact sets like Noblesse. Their attack stat on weapons is basically useless. So to fix these outlined issues, what can you do? Well, you make them insanely powerful without buffs. This is true for most HP scaling characters, except Dia. Dia seems to have been designed for failure from the beginning. She could have been on the same level as Hu Tao, but they purposely destroyed her kit for, well, reasons. Besides the obvious reasons that spread animosity towards Hoyoverse, that I won't be discussing here, a potential reason is defense. That brings us to the next point, Hoyo's importance on defensive abilities. Don't get me wrong, some defensive abilities are good to have, but the amount of power that a character loses because of defense seems to be ridiculous. It seems they allow a certain amount of points to a character when designing their kit, and they value defense and attack equally in this equation. So a character loses a lot of their potential because defense is weighed just as heavily as attack. But we all know, it's all about how fast you can clear things, aka damage. Any defensive utility that you're not using to survive or do more damage is just
useless.
A good example is Zhongli. He was released in an abysmal state, but with the buff, he is balanced out just right, with just the right amount of defense for just the right amount of power. Some bad examples are Dia, in pretty much every 4-star, but let's not get into the 4 stars. But for a 5-star, Dia offers horrible interruption resistance. Xingqiu beats her here, and it literally only lasts for about 8 seconds at most. And a little bit of self-healing. It's evident from what Neuvillette can do that healing shouldn't be factored as an aspect to her overall kit when scaling her power. Besides that, let's scale Dia into terms that are more relatable. Let's say when designing a character, you are allowed 5 points. Dia has 1 point into her attack and HP scaling, and then they added 2 points for her minuscule healing, and another 1 point for her interruption resistance, which is still extremely flawed by the way, and 1 more point for her damage mitigation, which again, doesn't really solve any issues. In the overall equation here, 4 of her points are just completely
worthless.
They're split so much that you can't even hone in on one thing that Dia can do, and instead she fails at everything. This is most likely the reason why Dia is such a horribly designed character. She does a lot of small things that don't amount to anything when combined together. Her damage mitigation is just a worse form of healing, and if you run her, it's not like you don't need a healer. You still need a healer. Not only is she lacking the damage that she deserves, but also the utility. Instead, she should have been scaled like this. 2 points into her attack and HP scaling, 2 points into her damage mitigation and interruption resistance, making it infinite for the duration of her elemental skill, and increase the duration on her skill at C0 for God's sake. And 1 point for self-healing. Now, let's talk about the main topic, Neuvillette. Let's first scale him. Alright, so the breakdown is as follows. 5 points in the HP scaling and power. No consideration for him the insane healing and survivability. Like, nothing at all. It's just straight power, and they just threw on the healing and survivability just cuz. The same as it done with Yelan, just 5 points into raw power. Yelan doesn't have much survivability, but she's still packing at least 30k HP, so she isn't getting one shot easily. Because of this, HP scaling Hydro characters don't need outside help to unlock all of their power, which is an issue. Neuvillette is an almost perfect character. He functions on his own, he heals himself, he deals insane damage, and he can kite and dodge attacks rather easily. A character with almost no flaws. At C1, this is even more prominent because he gets a massive attack boost and he gets interruption resistance. A character who has everything in one. Pretty crazy, right? A C6 Neuvillette is on or more powerful than a C6 Yelan because he can heal his HP so often. At least with Yelan, if you mess up, you can't recover HP. By no means, I don't feel that Neuvillette and Yelan should be nerfed. I just want consistency. If these characters can solo the game, other characters should be able to at least compete without needing to be both Hydro and HP scaling. If Dia got the same treatment as Neuvillette, then she should be able to solo the Abyss at C0 thanks to her self-healing and damage mitigation, but that's just not the case. Another L for Dia mains. At this point, I'm sure Hoyo realized that Neuvillette is way too powerful by himself, or maybe they just don't care. But it's no coincidence that both Neuvillette and Yelan offer so much damage. They can easily solo the entire game with no issues. Period. They may lose to a Hydro Slime, but that's about it. Hopefully, Hoyo fixes their power system for future characters to either make them more consistent, which is what I want, or just properly design a character to be the right fit. It's pretty clear that this is Hydro impact. You need Hydro for 90% of the reactions, Hydro characters are self-reliant, Hydro characters do stupid damage, and Hydro in itself is inside every character. Maybe they're saying that you should drink more water, get it deep inside you, so it can be in you. We're all Hydro after all, so I guess it makes sense. If you made it this far, then you may as well like the video, right? It's a win-win for the both of us, and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, Enigma out.